What if I told you everyone is wrong when it comes to Bitcoin price and it's going to do something that nobody else has predicted? So we're going to go ahead and talk about something that nobody else is really talking about and how you can use this information to better help you with your investing in both Q4 and in 2025. So let's go ahead, take a look at the charts. So here we are at the Bitcoin price. This is the daily chart. And as you can see, not a lot has changed over the last 6 months as Bitcoin has been in a downtrend since March. And so I have marked a few key areas on this chart. And you're going to notice that this is a downtrend and this is a channel. And we're currently at the midway point of that channel. And also to this big green block area is really an important level because this has acted like as a pivot level for Bitcoin for both support and resistance. It's rejected there as well too over the past 6 months. Now we do know that price has actually went through this level, but it has acted as an important region, and this is a 60K level. Also psychologically, it's an important level, but overall, Bitcoin has been in a downtrend. And so we want to change that. We want to see Bitcoin hold this area and of course, make higher lows to go on to that bullish Q4 bull market that we're hopefully all expecting into 2025. What nobody's telling you is you're going to have to pay attention to the stock market. I want to go ahead and get you up to date with a chart that you want to pay attention to. But first, before we do that, let's go ahead and look at the stock market. And so with the stock market, basically what we've seen so far is that it hit new all-time highs over this black line. And since then, there's been an issue, right? There's been the conflict with Israel and Iran. And of course, that's way more important than financial markets. But this channel talks about financial markets, especially when it comes to Bitcoin and the crypto market. And that's what we're going to focus on. And so even though that this is not as important as that, it does nevertheless have an impact on financial markets. And so we do want to know that the Iran and Israel conflict is probably spooking the market, causing a pullback. And with that said, the stock market pullback directly impacts Bitcoin in the crypto market. And that's primarily why I think most of us agree that we've seen that pullback in October instead of an Uptober, right? Instead of the green price action that we were hoping for. Now, we opened up the month at $63,000, meaning for Bitcoin to close green for the month, it has to hit back over that level. Now, historically, everyone has seen this chart right here, and this is not the most important chart. This is not what I'm trying to show you today. What I'm trying to show you is the prediction of everybody is a green October, but how it can actually be different this time. And so Q4, we're almost down 5% so far. Historically, Q4 has been phenomenal for Bitcoin in the crypto market, especially in having in election years, right? 2020, 2016, you can go ahead and take a look and go down in this chart and see 2020, 168% return for Q4, 2016, 58% return. That's phenomenal for Bitcoin price. Now, specifically October has also been great. We've seen 28% last year going into the election and having years. We saw 27% increase in price. In 2016, we had around 14 to 15% also. So typically October is a fantastic month. And what's going on? Why is this time different? Why are we down 5%? Now, we can certainly blame the Israel and Iran conflict. It definitely has direct impact on all markets globally. And so with that, Bitcoin could pull back in October, but there's something else that you want to pay attention for November of this year. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is the monthly market returns for the stock market. And why am I showing you the stock market? I'll get into that in a second. What I have here is I've marked the month of October. This shows me all the up years and all the down years for October. What I want to also show you is this. This is the BTC Pearson correlation. This is a chart that shows you the correlation between the stock market. Gold is on here. We're not going to pay attention to gold, but the stock market and Bitcoin. So the blue and green lines are the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. As far as the correlation, what this chart shows you is it gives you a number of 1, 0, and -1. So what a 1 correlation is whenever the lines of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ is close to 1, that's a 1 correlation, a 1-to-1 correlation, meaning that whenever the stock market price changes, Bitcoin's going to follow it. And so they're highly correlated. And so a 0 correlation means that there's no correlation. It's pretty self-explanatory. And a negative one shows that there tends to be an inverse correlation. And so with the inverse correlation, we've actually seen that happen in the past, because going back to the stock market charts, we saw that October 2023 had a negative 2%. 2020 had a negative 3%. Remember 2016, 2020, and 2016 were those election years, those halving years, and Bitcoin skyrocketed in October. But what happened to the stock market? Well, it pulled back. It had a negative 3% and a negative 1% loss. And so that was a negative correlation for Bitcoin and the stock market. So the point that I'm getting to was, during those times, we had a negative correlation. This is what I want you to pay attention to. If you look at the current chart right now, ever since July, there was a negative correlation in July, but ever since then, in August, September, all the way down to October, the correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin has continued to go closer to 1. We're at 0.89 right now, meaning that we're very close to a 1-to-1 correlation with Bitcoin and the stock market. And why is this a problem? How does this impact Bitcoin? Well, we've always seen Bitcoin have a phenomenal October, especially in those election and halving years, as we've talked about. But that's when we had those negative correlations for Bitcoin and the stock market. This time, what we're seeing is we're having a very positive correlation, almost a 1-to-1 correlation, meaning that if the stock market continues to pull back, Bitcoin is to continue to follow that, okay? So that's something that you want to pay attention to. And I don't know if a lot of people are actually talking about that correlation and how close it is right now. All you hear about is October this, October that, it's in green, and we're going to be green again. Well, not necessarily. Not if we're having this 1-to-1 correlation with the stock market, and the stock market continues to pull back, whether it is the war going on, whether it's the election and the impact of that in November, right? You have to pay attention to all these fundamental reasons behind the market movement as well, okay? You just can't say, well, Bitcoin has always been green, so it's going to be green again. Well, things have changed over the past 4 years, over the past 8 years. We have the ETF. We have a lot more traditional finance people and funds who are actually involved into Bitcoin. And so, yes, the correlation continues to get closer to 1-to-1 over a period of time, and we've seen that. So something else I want to show you, what you need to pay attention to is this, okay? And I'll explain it, is that as we look at November, everyone says October, Uptober. What if they said up instead of November, Upvember, right? Because what I want you to know is that November probably is a better month for the stock market, even more than October. If you notice, over the past 15 years, only 2021, 2015, 2011 and 2010 were negative. And if you look at the negative numbers also, they were all under 1% change in those times. In 2015, basically it was a flat month for the stock market. It was 0.02% down. In 2021, 0.95%, 0.32% for 2011, and 2010, 0.44%. Yeah, you can look at 2008, 2007. I mean, that's when we had some of those rocky years with the real estate market and a global issue, right? All markets crashed then. But if you look in the past 15 years, we've only had around 4 years in November for the stock market that have been down, and that's all been under 1%. So what I'm trying to tell you is that likely, more than likely, November should be a good month for the stock market. And with this close to 1 correlation with Bitcoin, it's very likely that we see, if this continues, Bitcoin follow that and the stock market in November be the time where we want to get in and be exposed to Bitcoin in the crypto market. So overall, what I'm looking at is saying, look, October could continue to be down. We could have a red October, but November likely to be good. And that's really the time where we need to be excited about Q4 and then going into 2025. It's just the first week in October. We've got a long time in Q4 for price action to change. And I think that we'll see that specifically if the conflict over in Israel, if it gets better, if it resolves even somewhat, the markets are going to react to that. It's going to go up in price, right? But bottom line, if there's a resolve in the conflict overseas, then yes, then there could be a really big rally come November, okay? You want to make sure to understand that there is a correlation between Bitcoin and the stock market. You need to pay attention to the Bitcoin Pearson correlation. I can actually link that below. That's at the block at their website. But we do know that November and December in October, Q4 tends to be really good, but you need to know that things have changed. There's a higher correlation than there used to be. And so what are my plans? My plans are this. Right now, currently, I am not too heavily exposed to altcoins. I want to make sure that Bitcoin holds this current level around 60K, right? Because it could continue to go down. If there's more conflict, if the stock market breaks down even more, we could see Bitcoin continue to go down a few percentage points. And while I don't think that it hits like new lows at all, I think it could hit mid 50Ks, right? Some people think lower. I don't think that. It's not this or that. Really, the market's going to bounce where the market's going to bounce. There's not a magic number on the chart where it has to hit. But we do know that overall, it needs to hold this 60K level. And if it doesn't, it's probably going to go down a little bit further. But I want to see a higher low form on this in order to be bullish, to then be more exposed to altcoins, because altcoins, as we know, are just high beta BTC, right? High beta Bitcoin, which means that they're very similar to Bitcoin. They just react, they pump harder and they dump harder. And so for me, being in an environment that is basically unstable, because we don't know what's going to happen when it comes to the war. We don't know really what's happening with the election yet. And if those things flip around, I'm going to be quick to jump into altcoins, because those things are probably going to skyrocket if Bitcoin starts to pump, right? They're high beta, they have a high reaction, and they tend to pump harder. So with that said, I want you to pay attention to this. I want you to pay attention to the correlation. I want you to understand that there is a major correlation when it comes to Bitcoin and the stock market, currently at almost 1, and understand that the market returns for the stock market in November tend to be really good, okay, overall. So that's something to look forward to. You can use this information for your investing at the end of Q4, as well as 2025. Pay attention to what the stock market's doing. And naturally too, if Bitcoin is pumping really hard and the stock market's dumping, that means there's a negative correlation, and you could probably just throw this chart out the window at that time and just understand you need to be exposed to Bitcoin in the crypto market if it is pumping while the stock markets are holding flat or dumping, because it's a bullish environment for those risk on assets. Hey, with that said, I've got a lot of good information in my other videos, so make sure to check those out. I talk about my strategy for selling the Bitcoin highs, and there's a lot of other good information. So make sure that you check those out, subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next video.